sitting on the side.
All right, 5 o'clock, let's get going, our final budget meeting, hopefully. So I thought maybe what we could do is just kind of start big picture, and then if it makes sense, we can go through the details and identify any areas that we may want to take a bigger look at. Just looking at the summary page, after everything that we've wanted in, we're at expenses of 4.96. Once we take into the revenue projections, that is roughly a 25.9% increase over last year, which is significant. Certainly more significant than I'm comfortable with necessarily proposing to the community.
Right.
So I think, it'd be helpful to just sort of understand where ideally we'd like to end up and what are the things that are important to keep in. I would like to end up with less than a 10% increase if we could to the town,
Which is right now.
25.9.
Right.
Yep. That is just the town's budget. The county tax also went up about 9.4%. So, I think usually what happens after we approve our budget, then Janet works with the assessors, and takes the school budget, our budget, and the county budget to project what the mill rate will be.
And the overlay is involved in that.
No.
So I went through and just sort of highlighted today what I saw as the big increases in the budget. Just really quickly, the preschool increase was around $36,000. The health center subsidy is up $118,000. The maintenance and shoulder work for the road is an increase of $85,000. These are increases over last year, not what's in the totals, yeah. The storm damage, there was a $240,000 increase. The library foundation was a $55,000 increase. The harbor contingency, there was an $8,000 increase line in there. And the road reconstruction, in the, use the wrong words now.
Capital reserve?
Yes, thank you. Capital reserves was a $300,000 increase over last year. So taking those into account is $842,000 of a $970,000 increase. I have ideas, but I don't know if it's helpful before we kind of dig into things, if it would be helpful for people to go through line by line one more time, or, okay?
Just that way, because there's something, even though it's nickels and dimes, essentially with a couple of the littler things, at least that will help with the overall, to make sure that if there's something else that, there was the only one I can think of, and so I guess I'll just jump out of line and start talking. It's the new position under Jordy. We talked about not giving that the cost of living increase.
The new hire?
Mhm.
No, I didn't hear that.
That was one of the things that we had talked about, and so having them at the rate of last year or by experience
I've
That
already
way.
hired him at a certain amount.
at the. Okay.
You mean hire him at what the current person was making?
Mhm.
No.
Instead of giving him the cost of living for the year that he wasn't.
It's
There.
not really a cost of living, it's a new rate. I'm doing,
The 3.25.
no, the hourly rate. that I'm paying.
Oh, I didn't know that theirs went up more than just the regular three
Well,
point
he's
two five.
starting at a different price, just as is Brian. The finance director is not being paid what Kathy, I can't hire someone who's quality for that.
Do you mind if I ask who you hired?
For the public works?
Yeah.
Tom Michaud.
Oh, awesome. I like Tom. Good guy.
Yeah, very nice, so we'll see.
know that, Tom.
He's Alana's husband.
Oh, yeah, I just don't recognize his last name.
I know, I had never spoken to him. He's very nice.
Gotcha.
Nice man.
Great.
What if we just look at like the individual concerns we may know we already have, rather than a line by line process? I just can think of one spot that I know of, but it's very small,
Okay.
but, the library request for 1,000 is now 2,000 in the budget. And, which is fantastic, the more the merrier.
That's what you would put in, right?
No,
Wasn't it?
I
But
requested
that's
for
the-
1,000.
Well, what was the 1,000?
The 1,000 was for their new, sustainability program.
There was already 1,000 there.
Oh, okay, so I was just adding.
Yeah, it was just, so it's 2,000 now, right?
It's 2,000 now for library projects.
Yeah, and, because she already had a line that says programs,
Yeah,
so I just added and sustainability.
Would
instead
it-
of-
would it be possible to separate that 1,000 out into its own line?
I can ask Brian to do that. I mean, I'm sure it just might be out of sync with these other accounts, but
I mean, if it's too difficult to do that. we
does
don't
she
need
have to keep track of what she's,
No, I
done?
think they just want to try to keep it separate. So
Oh.
that they know they have 1,000 for this and they have 1,000 for the rest of the stuff. Rather than
Oh,
one
yeah,
particular
I will,
vendor. That was my only point.
I tried to call it, stabilization. I first typed it.
I mean, I've got some sweeping.
Yeah,
That's-
I think, maybe if we work from the other end, that, I like these ideas, Pete and Melissa, but I'm wondering if we could switch to, if, from my vantage point, it'd be nice to look at the big numbers, and then if we can find some other smaller things, that would be maybe after the fact, we look at that. Because we've got some big numbers to bring down, and if Shay has a idea about how to do that, I'd love to hear it.
I have a machete, and I hope that it doesn't offend anyone with what I'm proposing. Right?
Go for it. Machete woman.
Yeah, well, Janet and I talked today about the storm damage line, which is, let's,
Public Works, page 10 of 19.
thank you. So that which is currently at $250,000, 175 of which was designated for Lorena's Cove. It sounds like we may have enough money in the funded balance to start that project this year rather than having to budget for it next year. And so I would recommend taking out $200,000 from that storm damage line. That would still leave us $50,000 in that line, which is $40,000 over last year. And we still have $85,000 more budgeted in maintenance and shoulder work for roads than what we've had in past years, so I feel like we're budgeting more for storm damage, and I don't wanna put Fred on the spot, cause I haven't had a chance to talk to Fred, but I am also hopeful that, you know, perhaps we would be successful with getting some FEMA funds to cover some of the cost of the damage, so maybe that could be a bonus, if not this year, then, you know, repay us for investments we will make next year. So that's one of my suggestions.
So drop that down to 50K.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Pete, how much did you say?
Oh, I was just clarifying that we would drop the storm damage from 250 to 50.
Yeah.
That's all.
Um. The other. I mean, I guess, does that feel comfortable to people, or do you want me to do all my proposals and then?
Oh, Fred is raising his
Oh,
hand.
yes, Fred, go ahead.
Yes, Shay, we will be getting money back. It's just like the last time we had a storm. I don't remember what the percentage was. Janet would know that probably better than I would. But we should be getting money back. We're just waiting to get set up in the portal. And we have until the 19th to get the information submitted, which I'll be working on tomorrow. So I don't know how much it will be, but every bit that we can report and get back will be very important.
Great.
Do you mind, Shay, if we go ahead and hear all of your suggestions, if that's okay with Melissa and Pete, and then see where we're at?
Yep, that's fine with me. The next thing that I was looking at was page 14 of 19. Under the harbor facilities, there's $8,000 in the 78-11, the contingency line, which I didn't really remember talking about. It sounds like it was Janet clarified with Ken Smith that it was for a finger float. But we do have $30,000 in the capital reserves for floats and inclines, so thought that we could perhaps reduce that to zero.
That's probably related to the one ferry, the little offshoot of the idea of putting a bigger float in the end side. I remember talking about this with them. It was 6
Or
months ago.
replacing,
Yeah, I was gonna
One
say, I know
that might
he
be-
had talked with me about the potential for replacing a float at Big Tree too. But it seemed all speculation.
but they do have enough money to do that. If you were thinking it was 8,000. It seems like a lot for a thing with the float, but maybe not. But here, on his budget, it just said contingency. And I think there's been a contingency line there, but it's never been used, so he put it in there, but I did not pick up whether it was a finger float. I didn't want it, but he told me that this afternoon. But I'll explain to him. About the
Yeah, and like I said, I
captain.
mean, I don't wanna cut people's budgets and have them feel like they can't do what they need to do, so but if it's for a finger float and we feel like we have the money, then I.
Yeah, he could do it right now. They wouldn't have to wait until the budget.
So it's, yeah, they're talking about the dinghy float. Presumably, it's Dylan talking about it in a minute, so presumably the Seal Harbor. And it says it was about $8,000 to replace it, so I think that's what he was looking at.
Okay, yeah, because Ken just said a dinghy float, or a finger float.
Pete, I'm sorry, are you saying that we should be leaving that amount because it's,
No, I'm just saying, I think what they're referring to is a dinghy float at, up by Mosley's.
okay. I apologize, it's a little hard for me to hear on Zoom. It's a little hard for me to hear anyway, but especially on Zoom. So if I can't hear, I just want to apologize in advance for asking if I can't.
No worries, he's just checking his notes from past harbor committee, discussions.
Great, perfect.
That's the smallest of my cuts, so, the next one I would suggest is looking at capital reserves and, perhaps taking the road reconstruction and paving from $400,000 and lowering that down to $200,000. in our operating budget, we also are budgeting $100,000 for paving for this year, so, that would give us, you know, we would have $300,000 total in kind of road paving funds, and, ideally, we wouldn't use that $200,000, it would be it would sit there and hopefully we could put another $200,000 in next year, basically.
So we don't wanna do any paving this year? Well, we don't have enough money to do.
We don't have enough money.
We have $100,000.
We'll have 100,000, like I was saying, the shape. There are some spots we have to do, like by the Narrows, we've got to do something there, and there's several culverts that you can drive over, and you know that they've been just cold patched, and a couple other things that
Right.
need to happen, so.
I just feel like what we have in the past done is we've tried to get it to $400,000 and then we've spent it. And, you know, it would be great to have $400,000 in there, but I also recognize that it's a lot. It's a lot, like we've never necessarily built it up, put $400,000 in there at a WAP. So it's a big increase to ask the community to put in 1 year.
And hopefully, like you said, FEMA money will come back, and that can go into there, and that can be, or,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to put our money on the reconstruction side of it anyway, so if we just say we're putting 200,000 into reconstruction to cut out the paving budget for this year. And maybe try to commit to it for next year. You know, when we're not worrying about multiple huge road projects.
So you're suggesting,
I agree with you,
Okay.
is what I'm saying.
so putting,
I
so
agree.
put 200, to keep $200,000 in the road reconstruction money that we would set aside, basically. And then have $100,000 in our current operating budget to take care of the small places that need to be done this year, but not doing the major paving project, basically.
I think it'll be an easier sell to the town to sell them on a big expense for road reconstruction repair. Than it would be to sell them on a bigger bill for paving. Would be my thought.
That machete's doing pretty well, Shay.
The last thing they have is a revenue, item, which looking, I mean, it seems like the note that we received from Marge Hall, our accountant, was very good news in that, we thought that we only had around $750,000 in our, fund balance. And it looks like actually after this year, we would have 1.2 in the fund balance. You'll see in her notes that she's suggesting that we be prepared to use $175,000 of that for the East Shore Drive road repair. So we have 1.1 to work with in our fund balance. I think Janet, what Janet said today was that, the auditors suggest that we have at least 2 months worth of cash in our fund balance, so that would be, you know, 700,000-ish for us. In the fund balance. Last year, we didn't use anything from fund balance for our revenue. And, you know, so I think conservatively, we could use $200,000 in the fund balance. For revenue, we could use up to $400,000 and keep that $700,000, you know, keep under that threshold for what we would need to spend, but I'm a little bit hesitant about, drawing down everything and running it into the same situation that the school is having this year, and that if we use too much carry forward from past years, that it would cause a huge increase next year rather than this year. So I was sort of proposing that we maybe use $200,000, although could be.
Can we use that money for reconstruction and roads too, right? Because that's what Marge is saying to do for the Cove project? Or is that a different one?
So the fund balance, as I understand it, we basically put in as revenue for this year. I don't know how it works, Janet. It basically what she's saying is that we make an additional draw this year to offset unbudgeted expenses for the road.
Well, for Lorraine's Cove, if that gets fixed before June 30, which would be my desire to get it done, that would just come out of the current year and what undesignated fund balance we have. So going forward, we would just go by our budget. We wouldn't have to think about the extra $175,000 in the budget, because it will come out of at the end of the year, because we'll be over on roads. That would just put us over, but she said it's all right to do that for roads. We can do that. And it would just come out of, and she said we had enough, at that time, she said we had enough undesignated fund balance that would cover it. So, or if we want to wait, hold off, we'll have to put it out to bid. So I don't know if it could even happen before, but it would be nice to get it done before the summer. But if it doesn't happen, well, we'll see how this goes. If it doesn't happen, then we've already taken up the 200. Wow. What to think about that, but.
What do you mean when we what?
Well, if we took out the 200, extra 200 under the road storm, thinking, it's gonna come out, it's gonna get done before this budget, but if I can't get it done before this budget, and I don't have that 200,
And it's not there too.
Could
yeah,
we,
or else it's still, the count will be over, the road line will be over.
could we keep it removed and add it to our, idea they want 700,000 in cash held for month's expenses? Could we remove it from the budget still and factor it into kind of a $900,000 hold? That way, it's not in the budget, and if it's doable, we have the money now, and if not, it's still held in the next period.
Well, and I hope to know within a week or so about this road project, you know, if I can hear back from Bill Lane. And he thinks, you know, if I get the bids out, you know, it was pretty quick last time. Just,
Right, I guess a question I have about it is I feel like the way that she's explaining it is, is that we have 1.28 in our unassigned fund balance right now, right? And, removing, assuming that we could use $175,000 of that for the East Shore Drive project, regardless of what fiscal year it falls in, because we haven't budgeted for it in our current fiscal year.
right, yeah,
And we don't currently have it, well, I guess if we remove the $200,000 from storm damage, we wouldn't have it budgeted in next fiscal year, right?
right.
But we could still use that 175 for East Shore Drive, and even after we use that 175, we still have 1.1 left in our unassigned fund balance.
Mhm.
So we could use $200,000 of that and still keep 900,000 in the unassigned fund balance.
Yeah, I mean, we've been down as low as 550 in the unassigned fund balance. And last year, like she said, when I put that in there saying last year was 758,000, that was an estimate that she gave me. It's just like she's giving me right now this, but she's further along in the budget, I think, so I feel more confident in that amount.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm not clear on is, to me, if we don't have to have it budgeted in this fiscal year, why would we have to have it budgeted in next fiscal year if we can use that revenue to cover the unfunded expenses anyway?
And if we do use it, I just have to put an article in that saying, specify that amount that we're using in the warrant. Will
Well, presumably we
Annual
have to
warrant.
do that this year too, right?
be- And it's in there anyway, there's an article, a generic article that says, you know, overages will be covered. But she did specify, I should put that in that 175, that would make it
Okay,
document trail.
so if, from that perspective, is it cleaner to budget the expenses and the revenue? Or would you rather not budget either one, since we're not sure if we're able to land it in this fiscal year or not?
I think she's fine with it, as long as the auditor's fine with it, so. If it can happen in this fiscal year, great, to me, that's cleaner than, but if it happens, you know, doesn't happen until the fall or whatever, it just,
Okay.
It sounds either way, it's all right with the auditor and therefore we can do that.
yeah, and Chris, I've got all her emails.
Okay, so with that, I would say we don't budget the expenses and we don't budget the revenue, and we can have it in a warrant article to be transparent. So with those 4 suggestions, taking storm damage down to 50, removing the harbor contingency of 8,000, reducing the road reconstruction / paving in capital reserves, and adding $200,000 of revenue to, from the fund balance that improves our budget $608,000. So, by my calculations, that gets us basically to an 8.7% increase over last year.
Good job.
Yeah, and Shay, that includes the amount that Janet sent us that was about 500,000, 490 or something like that. Oh, yeah, you included that. The good news from Marge.
Oh, yes, about that.
Not that much, but
Yeah, no, because like I explained, you know, Shay was asking, how did we go from 758,000
yeah,
to 1,000,000.28. And she explained that 758 was an estimate from last year. And it was actually higher. It was $490,000 higher,
okay.
so that's why we had more to, ignorance is bliss, we had more money, we didn't know it. But okay, so 200 extra in the revenue.
There's a question from Fred.
Oh, yeah, Fred's saying there should be money coming back from Uranus Cove, so that would be
Yeah.
good news for our fund balance too.
Do we want to go back and look at Melissa and Pete's additional pieces, or do we feel comfortable with the 8.7%? That looks pretty good to me, even though it's still an increase. Nice job, Shay, by the way.
Well, I get stressed out doing things on the fly, and so it's easier for me if I sit down and try to map it out a little bit. Because it's a lot of money to cut.
I do think that we need to talk about the preschool. And so for what was the total amount that they were wanting, like the 23 plus 6, 29,000, 30,000?
They wanted 129,750 was their last request, which was a $36,750 increase over last year's. And my personal take on it is, I mean, it's a huge increase. And it was came as a bit of a surprise. I feel like as a community, if we aren't investing in attracting and retaining young families, then we're, we've got a real problem. So my sort of personal preference on it would be to keep their request this year and indicate that, we've had 2 major increases from them, and prior to that, it was very, we had a long-standing agreement to cover $75,000. That we say that, this is sort of the max that the town is willing to contribute, that we support them and hope that they can find additional ways in their budgeting process that's not just taxpayer revenue. That's my,
And just to say, I spoke with Emily and they are planning on a major raising effort and plan to do that. If not annually, at least regularly. And, so I think they get the writing on the wall. But I agree with, this is an important, area for the town to support.
I'm hesitant because that with it being a subsidy into a, we don't know their budget or anything like that. And so asking taxpayers to pay into something that then they do, like with all the rest of it, we kind of handle where the money goes and everything. It is a very large increase. And I think it is because it came kind of out of left field. I don't know. I'm not overly comfortable with it. I was hoping that, I was trying to talk with one of them earlier and wasn't ever able to sync up the times. Is the person that they just hired the one that they're hoping to get the money to pay for? Or is that money already in there and they're looking to hire yet another person?
I'm not sure I absolutely know the answer to that, Melissa. It's a good question. I believe that is a new position, so I think the money was for that position. And they desperately need the new hire. Their enrollments are going up. They have a waiting list. The good news is that there are new young families on the island and they need a school for their kids to go to, preschool for the kids to go to. So I think that they're cognizant of the situation that they're in and they know that they're in a bind this year, but I don't think that they are making any assumptions about future support. I think they're just really in a bind and desperate to get a position funded and then move onward.
Right, I was just thinking about how long it took them to hire the person that they just got. It took them over a year to hire for her.
They couldn't find housing. Yeah, it did take a long time. It wasn't over a year, but it was a long time.
I put in the ad last June for it. And so, yeah, I guess what, 6 months, 9 months?
And they also asked for 6,000 for substitutes, or I believe, extra people to help them out.
I'm just, I hope that Caitlin finds housing and I know that she'll be a great addition to the preschool. I was just curious if it was to pay for her current position to make sure that that one was funded, or if this is another hopeful position.
So I did talk to them, or get a hold of Emily and Lindsay in some detail. And they're asking for money for wages. My understanding is that it includes the new teacher,
Okay.
that they have to get a new teacher by law or by whatever regulation, and they don't have the money to pay her, so they're asking for the increase. I do have their projections for their like upcoming years, their graduation years. This year, or the 2025 graduating class is 8 they're expecting. And then they're predicting classes of 2, 3, 2, and 2 leading into 2030. So I'm also hesitant to increase, but I think it might be like next year likely wouldn't be a big increase on top of anything on this year.
Right.
You know, I think they are aware that their numbers, at least from what they've said, seem to be kind of. So it might be,
This
but
is
that
the
they will
heavy
still
part.
they'll still need the new teacher regardless,
Mhm.
but that, you know, hopefully they can. Get
So
them
this
by-
is for the new one that is coming in.
It sounds like, yeah.
Okay, that was the big part of the question, was that if they already had her funded, then to make,
What Emily and I have asked the town for will fund the lead infant toddler teacher role to complete the staff. To survive this year and years to come. If we get 0 new students, we still need at least 3 full-time teachers on staff. As well as their substitutes, so.
which is what they have now.
Yeah, it's the regulations for toddler programs and infant programs. You have to have a certain number of teachers per child. It doesn't matter, you know, you have to have so you can't add another student unless you have sufficient teachers to cover that area. I don't think that's what you were asking, Melissa, but that's part of their dilemma. They've got to have a certain number of teachers, or they can't bring in the new students.
Right.
And then the insurance part, that where it went up, was it last year, the first year that they broke that out?
Mhm.
I don't wanna like compare apples to oranges, but the budget they have for substitutes is significantly higher than main school, right? They want 6,000 annually for substitutes, and where are we at?
Elementary's at 4.
4,000 for the year.
Mhm.
So I don't wanna tell them how to compensate or plan for that, but I would,
They do go year round, right?
think so, yeah. So maybe
Versus
that's where it's coming
schools.
from.
Couple months off, 3 months off, yeah.
I don't love it. I don't.
And we've never
love the
used all
agency
those.
there.
Yeah. Hard to find them.
Very much.
And it's
And
hard
so-
for them to find them, you have to be,
Well, that was kind of my other part of the quandary was having the money is great, but if you don't have a place to put the money, like if they don't have the subs and they don't have it, then it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, essentially, you know, taking it from the taxpayers to put it to them that they then can't use it because they don't have it, but hopefully they get the substitutes and then it all works out.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to start with making sure that you have the money to pay the substitutes, and then if that doesn't work out, then you've gotta figure out different.
It'd be interesting to see how much money they had left over last year for it, that they had budgeted. But it doesn't matter.
it
I
might be
think we
good.
should, I think we should go with the funding that we've already approved for them, and maybe a more detailed examination if if we have concerns when we go into next year's budget. We can look a little more closely at some of these issues, but I think they're managing their personnel according to requirements, and sort of the difficulty in finding teachers and bringing them over. The big issue for this hire, and I think you all know it, but was finding housing, and they struggled. I don't know if you've gotten all their emails, but they've been having a very difficult time finding housing for this teacher, and they finally managed to do it, but it's really patching things together. So, you know, I sort of want to respect their process and what they've done with their hires at this point, and then if we want to be more careful in reviewing it next year, let's do that next year. But I think it's kind of late to sort of judge whether or not their budget process is appropriate.
Yeah, I don't think it's our place to do that. I mean, in that sense, anyway. I just think it looks like we're consistently giving them more and more and more. And if we continue that trend, we may have to like reevaluate their role or relationship with us and with the town.
Yeah.
You know, if it was supposed to be just us subsidizing, 75,000 a year, then it went up to 93, now it's 129. You know?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that we should say that to them, that we are concerned about the trend and feel like we need additional information for transparency and a cap, or, you know, that we would value a more detailed conversation. And I think Lauren is the ex officio with them, you know, maybe you could have that conversation and figure out really sort of what is the best process to get some clarity about where they stand and where we stand for well ahead of this process next year.
I think that's perfectly valid, and yes, definitely.
Does that feel comfortable for you, Melissa? Sure.
I have a suggestion about, how about it fluctuates in the summer, doesn't it? It's not just, people that live here year round. Sometimes there's residents that, enroll during the summer program. Do they have a specific summer program? Or is it just, because I've spoken with them recently, and they're gonna be having 17 new students. 17, that's a huge amount. Like I don't know how many there are now, but 17 more students. That
Hmm.
seems like a high number, like to get enrolled, but maybe that's for the summer. So maybe if they have a summer program, whoever, maybe there needs to be a tuition for that summer,
I think they
enrollment.
they do have to pay.
Oh, that's an
Yeah,
enrollment.
yeah,
Oh,
and I
okay.
don't know.
I'm
if
not
they can
aware of that, so.
Charge summer people more.
No, you can't do that. Morally unethical. I know, I wish you could, believe me, but,
It's
Yeah.
not about more, but it would be a tuition.
Yeah, well, they do, you do have to pay, it's not free.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, they have to pay. They're supposed to pay. I mean, I don't know anything about their finances.
Yeah, I know that they did give us a figure and I don't remember what it was. I don't think it's listed in their memo to us.
That might be a good point of suggestion for them, is to like, I know they went up a little bit this year, but to reevaluate, like, what is the realistic tuition rate they can be charging?
Well, I'm also wondering if they're bringing in 17 more kids for the summer. Where are they bringing in the extra staff to cover them if they're already at the max of their regulation?
I don't know about numbers there.
Well, I don't know. that
Lauren,
it's
do
in
you
the
know that?
summer. I don't know that it's in throughout the summer, but it's throughout, like, their enrollment is going up. So that's why they have the new person. So maybe that's where the new person is coming in.
Well, I think that new person, we need to separate out the executive director role from the infant toddler. And currently Lindsay was doing both jobs.
Right, but I guess this is where I feel like, I don't want the select board, or at least right now, the current structure is that the select board doesn't have to worry about
Right, what they've got going. 'cause
managing,
they're
right,
not
right,
us.
they're managing
They have
that
nothing with
and,
us from the town.
I think that they've done a good job of that, of creating a program that is enrolling 17 student, kids. And it may be that we ask them for more information going forward and going into the budget process to make sure that we are more comfortable since we are subsidizing it at a higher level.
We're gonna continue going more and more, then we need to start playing more and more of a role in their budgeting. I would think.
Maybe that's why the 6K is for the substitutes rather than going less to the main school and more to this, Cause I don't know that there's that many going, but eventually it will be the main school if those students is staying here and staying in the community, obviously.
Well, I think we all agree that the preschool is very, very important to the island. Certainly it's high on our list to have young families and new businesses. And you really can't do that without having a good preschool. And I think everybody's in agreement in this discussion that we need to get more information and to be clear about the fact that we're about at the limit of what the town plans to contribute to their budget. But I think they're doing a really fine job and we can certainly ask more information, but I'm pretty impressed with what they've done. It's growing.
Give me yes, but.
Yeah. Are there other specific lines that people want to take a look at or have a discussion around?
Is there any more any more like road construction money or big expenses that we can take a chunk out of our unfunded balance for? Shave 10,000 off of something, take it out unfunded, or just to throw something at the wall and see if it sticks.
I mean, we could certainly increase the amount of fund balance that we use for revenue.
I do, actually. And Fred's still here. Don't take this the wrong way, Fred. The 14,000 for the reserve officer, we haven't had budgeted for in the past.
Can you say what line and page that is?
1015, page 5. Could that be the kind of thing that we eliminate from the budget, but expect it but be ready to take out of unfunded? Because if we don't have, I mean, unless we have a reserve officer like on deck or ready to hire,
He might have someone lined up, that may be why it's back here. But it's not really like you can use undesignated fund balance for things like that, that if we took it away and
right?
then he used it and there was a negative there, then at the end of the year, that's when undesignated fund balance would cover that, but we should really plan on that, unlike this road things, different roads
Right.
are different.
That's just like, that's the kind of thing I'm looking at, like money that we're setting aside for things that we maybe don't have lined up, but.
Did he hear your question or ask about that?
Hey, Fred,
I can't
Yeah.
find it.
do you have, you got this reserve officer line? Do you have someone in mind for that, or like, are you expecting somebody?
We're trying to recruit somebody from the island right now and hopefully get somebody from the mainland. If you do
Okay.
away with the money, I mean, from my 20 years of working for the town, doing budgets, once you take the money out, usually you don't get it back. Because then
Right.
you're adding that money back. Arch Gillies, when he was the chairman of the select board, said, you should never take money away from emergency services, because if you're lucky enough to get somebody, that's what you have. So
Yeah.
if you don't have Fred, which, you know, I
I
do
don't-
24 day, but if you don't have an option first of all, to get somebody in there that could potentially replace me eventually when I retire,
Don't say
Uh,
that.
you know, well,
I know, it's fine.
listen, I'm just telling you what I know from the work I do. You didn't have anybody here some of the days I was gone, and there was some things that happened. We'd like to find somebody from the island, or potentially some from the island to replace me. I do believe in what Arch always said. You can't take the money from emergency services, because if you do find that one candidate that's willing to fill that position, you won't have it there to be able to do that. So,
Okay.
you know,
No,
and
that makes total
I
sense.
haven't had a reserve officer for 2 years. I used to have 3, but of course, you know, the trilogy of what's going on with law enforcement right now. I, I know where you're coming from, because I used to do budget with the select board, but I really agree with what Arch, his wisdom on that is, you don't take money out of it if you don't have to. I mean, if you have to, you have to, but
Yeah,
if you find somebody from Islesboro that wants to fill that position and could eventually be in my place, so that there's no, you know, that hour and a half, 2 hours to get somebody from the mainland's a long time when something's going down.
no, I get it, I appreciate it. I've just been looking at things that are like fairly new this year. No, that makes perfect sense, and if the opportunity arises, you're right, I'd like to be able to act on it, so. Yeah,
Yep.
I appreciate it. Thank
Cross
you.
it, we can find somebody.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
Thank you, Pete.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so scratch that comment off the table. That makes perfect sense.
I've got a question about page 8 under health. For the ferry runs, it looks like we've budgeted $20,000 this year, and $20,000 is suggested for the coming year, but there is a note about capital reserves having 36,000. Are we pulling from that at all this year?
Not unless I need to, if this gets used, but if you, you know, excuse me, we could take that 20 out of there and just, plan on using out of the capital reserves.
How did that
For
capital
you.
reserves get built for that line
Jeff Grossman started
a long
that,
time ago?
yeah. And, he started the capital reserve, and then he also did budgeting. Put some in the budget also, but he might have started with 10,000. And then it just went, I mean, then that was before ferry, emergency trips were $1,000 each. So it all depends how many emergencies
Hmm.
there are. So, but that is a possibility, like right now, to date, we've used 13,000. But, Yeah, I mean, we could get by.
Well, it's a small amount, I just wondered, I don't know. Oh, another really small question is, page 1219. The consultants mowing, I know why there's $3,200 there for, because we just approved that contract. But I was surprised that we haven't budgeted for it before, and I wasn't sure if maybe it was in another different line. Because we,
Cause it really, as I'm. Septic field, well, septic field and does have. Well, that's had mowing every year.
right, that's why.
And the transfer station, that
Oh, mowing,
is.
oh, so that's in there
So
twice.
wait a minute, maybe,
Aha.
yeah, aha. Oh, you get the prize. Wait a minute, Bob. So it's septic and transfer, yeah, so there we go. I'm glad you saw that, $3,200. I mean, 35, I had 35 because I think, was it 35 or 32 that he just did?
I thought that
Maybe
you
it
just
was
did 32,
32, that's what 327, why do I have 35 now?
so we'll take out the 35 then?
Yes, but I'll make the
That
35 32.
Let's make sure that's what it was, because maybe me and Shay are just hopeful it was 32.
Yeah, I'm thinking, why would
I
he?
feel like it went down, I feel like it did go down though when we looked at it.
I think she said we had 35 in there, and he said 32, and I was like, cool.
That's what I remember too.
Landfill. Yeah, $6,400 per year, so 32,
Yeah.
it should be, so I'm gonna take 32 out of the. Or it doesn't, guess it doesn't matter where it is. You either take it out of the transfer station, I'm not dividing it by 2 to put in both places, cause it's. The one. Doesn't matter, maybe I'll leave the 32 up there and I'll just delete 35.
In my notes from the select board meeting, you wanted to budget 3,500 a year.
I wanted to.
I don't remember who said that, but I can listen. I haven't listened to the recording yet, but
That was before he put a bid in, maybe.
Is it-
it was after you looked at the bid.
Aren't we also missing a bid? Only one of them got bid on and we're
The
waiting on the other one.
roadside mowing
Right,
didn't get.
That's a
bid on.
different line.
okay.
Yeah, that's under. Alright, so why don't I do that? Take 47, 46.
So just to be clear, are we taking the 32 or are we taking the
I'm taking the
35?
35 away.
So we were, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're down to 8.6.
Shay, I'm wondering about, I met at the meeting where Mert showed up, we were talking about the Up Island Fire Substation. I think it's 270-45 under capital reserves. There is money in there set aside, but we do have money in the expected in the warrant for holding aside money for the Up Island Public Safety Garage. I forget whether Fred was saying that it's different from that Up Island Public Safety Garage or not.
Where is that?
I think what he was saying was that that was
18
early
of 19.
seed money for the Up Island Public Safety Garage.
Yeah,
But that, so it can and should be used for that project, but I don't necessarily know that it makes sense to use that revenue now until
the warrants approved and the vote.
And next year, my understanding is based on timing that we are likely to only have to pay the interest rate on any bond that we take out. So I think we have $45,000 right now in the budget for that interest payment. It is the only money in the operating budget for the municipal building project.
Yeah, this
Great.
was started before the whole, I mean, this, years Merck's been wanting. So one year we finally started putting away, I don't know if they put away 15 at one time or if they did it 5 and 5 and 5. but
So
tried.
it's probably makes sense to keep that in there until we have, I mean, we don't know whether the warrant's gonna be approved, so we should keep that money in, it's, at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now we're at 3,832,000 and change, which is an 8.6% increase from last year, looking at the net, once you take into account the revenue projections. How are people feeling about that?
Pete, did you have other ideas that we didn't end up listening
No.
to?
Not really. I haven't had much of a chance to look at this in detail. I've been really wrapped up in a million other work things and, so unfortunately, no. No, if we're aiming for 10% or less of an increase and we're at 8.6, then I would be hesitant to just continue shaving just for the sake of lowering it. It feels like not a scary number, not a scary increase. But I would say, why continue to chip away? But my first time through the process, maybe it's,
We have a question coming in. Can you read it? The Kavanaugh asks, is there money in the rec budget to be saved? 2024 budget is 218,498. 104,811 is unspent.
In recreation, well, that's the whole of recreation. We still have 3 months to go. You know,
Yeah, and I
and
think,
things start happening maybe in May and June on some of these.
the balances line is actually from February,
Yeah,
right?
close to
So-
the February balance. So things have been spent out of that line since then. Of course, the rec program, no. Not so much, but
Where is the, right,
Starts on page 13.
thank you.
library, harbor.
The new foundation on the library, is that something that is also being funded by the Friends of the Library or no?
No,
believe so.
shouldn't be. I mean, that's a building.
Yeah, I just didn't know if
Yeah.
it was the lighthouse.
Well, they took that on to do that themselves,
Mhm.
fundraise for. I don't know if Friends, I don't know the relationship of Friends.
I don't fully understand either.
I mean, it started out as gardening and buying books.
Yeah.
But-
No, I don't think they're in the market to work on the foundation.
But that should take care of, that's a one-time project, right? That's not a piece together deal.
No,
That will
the
be one,
library.
yeah, that'll be a one and done.
Yeah.
It's getting wet down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a mess, a holding mess.
So,
That basement always was one.
Are you feeling okay with an 8.6% increase, Melissa?
Never, but if we don't think that there's anything else that we can do, then.
I'm also trying to consider what the school is proposing. The potential warrants that we're gonna be proposing and just trying to put everybody in the best possible position.
Yeah.
And so if there's anything else that we can ease, you know, and then also making sure that we're putting ourselves in the best position, because we know that roads and the reconstruction and the East Shore Drive is going to come back to bite us. And so
Yeah,
it's painful to take away from roads at any point, and then, but I know that it's a too big of a chunk to try to ask for.
I think that's well said, Melissa, thank you. But if I understand what Janet and Shay are saying, that we're still covered with the roads. Am I wrong in that? We're still addressing that. We still have a contingency plan.
yeah, I mean, what I would say is what we have is $85,000 increase over last year for maintenance and shoulder work, which I know we've heard a lot about. We've got $50,000 in storm damage. In addition to considering taking $175,000 from the fund balance for Lorena's Cove. We've got $100,000 for small paving this year. And we have $200,000 in road reconstruction for the safe. And then I guess, Fred, do you know what we could expect for timing on news from FEMA for how much money we might
That's a
get
long
there?
that's a long process. Because we have to submit the information and then they have a big meeting to review all of it. I mean, that's a slow process, but probably about a year.
Yeah, I know that in one of the FEMA briefings that they had, and maybe that was the main state one that they had for individuals that were adversely affected by the storms. They were saying that they were looking for, after they get everything entered and done through, that it would be 2 to 3 years. Just like with the, mill surplus that they just had that came through was with FEMA money. And so it was try to do what you can now. You know, it's not gonna be a windfall that comes through, but it'll be something that will help with your nest egg.
Shay, the last time we submitted for damages, we did get the money back. It wasn't quite everything that we wanted, but it covered quite a bit of it. It took about a year and a half. One thing I noticed when I reviewed the material the last couple of days is that the process is a little bit different now. So I'm reluctant to say the timing. I'll know a little bit better tomorrow when I meet with the EMA director. But I'm gonna say a year and a half, and I'm not so sure as if Melissa isn't gonna be more on the realistic side with a couple of years. So that's what you're looking at right now.
Yeah. No, I feel like even if it's, I mean, it's good for us to know for our long-term planning for, you know, what we should be expecting to put aside ourselves in the road reconstruction versus when we could maybe, expect an infusion from FEMA funds in the future.
I'll get back to Janet with an email if I find anything out tomorrow, and I'll have her forward it on to all of you.
Thanks. Thank you, Fred.
You're welcome.
I mean, we can always increase the amount that we use with fund balance to $250,000. That gets us to 7.2%. It's just a matter of how much we want to carry forward. I'd sort of rather be conservative than.
It's gonna put us in the same position as the school.
I mean, it's 8.7 is a tough pill to swallow, but at least most of the big chunk is going to like tangible things that we all know are very needed. And it might be not as hard to sell as we think it might be.
7 sounds better.
7 doesn't.
7 does sound better.
Yeah, I mean, I think you easily could do 250. And I was thinking you were gonna do 400 to begin with. But I think you easily could do 250. But, up to you.
Where does 225 land us? Just look for compromise. you know.
Is it still gonna be?
7.9.
There you go.
That's below 8.
Oh, it sounds better.
I feel like we're used car salesmen
I
at
know.
that point.
Do you think you wanna do that? Or like,
Yeah, I mean, here. I mean, using it still keeps 855 in fund balance. I am just worried about Robin, of paying the 175 out of it too, and we're taking 2 big chunks out of it this year. But we could do 225 and keep it at 7.9.
Something next year. Or refill it next year to some part of that.
Well, it depends, it all is based on how much we don't use, is how much it rolls in. So that's where in FY 23 is what she just calculated, there's $50,000 we can roll into it. So
For instance-
definitely, in some years it can be big chunks, and some years it's smaller chunks, and we can't necessarily bank on it.
and for instance, that 45,000 I budgeted for this year under debt service, thinking, Marge said, just let that roll into fund balance instead of, someone might want to pull that out and put that somewhere else, but just let that roll back. That's one thing, but we don't have a lot of things that we can. It's not a fleshy budget, is that the word I want to say? There's not a lot of. When I first.
There's not a lot of filler in it.
No, when I first took this job, that budget had so many weird little pockets in it and like, but I see why. They were trying to build up the fund balance probably.
Well, 225 gets us under 8. And feels like a good compromise, and it's like not gonna leave us with a scary amount of the unfunded side. That's what I would suggest we do.
That feels comfortable to me.
I like that idea.
Okay, so then just to summarize what we have done today. Reduce the storm damage by 200,000. Reduce the harbor contingency by 8,000, reduce the road construction capital reserve fund by 200. Reduce the mowing line by 3,500 as a duplicate, and increase our revenue with the fund balance of 225,000. Leaving what I believe to be a 3.807,493.5 budget. Would anyone like to move to approve that budget? So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, Lauren,
Aye.
Melissa? Pete, actually, now that I say that,
Call.
we're in a workshop, we can't take a vote. Right? We have to approve it at our next
Yeah,
budget, technically. At our next meeting, when we'll have the final,
we'll have all the final numbers.
Okay, sorry. Sorry about that,
Practice run.
right?
Lauren might actually be here in person, huh?
I might be there in person. Yay.
Yeah. She hasn't had a vacation. She's been gone.
All right, is there anything else anybody wants to bring up on budget for now? All right, let's adjourn.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Lauren.
Bye.
Bye, Jennifer.